Okay. Are there many people here familiar with the intrinsics of Postgres, as in the alignment issues? If not, well, then that's going to be a relatively short talk. Currently, Postgres has its attributes and it stores them in an aligned manner. That means that, for instance, a Boolean, which is of a single byte size, will be aligned to that single byte, but other values, for instance, big ints, which are 8 bytes in size, are aligned to 8 bytes. That means that when you store a big int behind the Boolean, you will have potentially up to 7 bytes of alignment that are wasted and can't be used by the storage engine. So that's up to some 43% or so wasted space in your tuple. That's a lot, and we can't really, we currently don't really use that, and we should improve on that. Currently, the only way to recover that data is by changing the column order, which you can only do by loading the data into another table. That's not great. We don't even recover the data of or the space used by dropped columns. So it's especially bad in cases where you have a lot of column load by the dropping columns and recreating columns. It's not great at all. So yeah, right now that means you have to recreate the table. One way we could potentially lessen the load is essentially recreating the table during, for instance, a cluster operation, in which case we are already essentially rewriting the whole table. But there's no infrastructure for that right now, and it has several issues. Difficult parts in that you have to also take care of all constraints and references to column indexes as well. And there's a lot of stuff that needs to be updated at that point. Yeah, that's the basic idea. There's a lot of problems there. We don't really do that automatically right now. Another way to improve on the user experience there, for instance, if they create a new table that has a bad layout, we should be able to hint or improve on the layout by automatically reordering the columns, but SQL spec doesn't allow us right now, so that's not great. Yeah. That's the basis of my idea. Are there any people that have more information or also have an idea?
Hey, hi, I'm Euler.
Hi.
It could be a GUC. So you just say, hey, you reorder my columns with the best alignment or something like that. But like you said, you have to figure out what's the best layout. And I'm also not sure about you will have a different layout from what the user provided. Maybe it's an issue. And if so, maybe we have to check another feature that was discussed a long time ago, that's related to decouple the logical and physical point. So you have a logical order and physical order. I don't know. It's just ideas.
Yeah, correct. That was a patch a long time ago, but I haven't really, as in, it is still on the to-do in the wiki, but there's not a lot of activity on that. And I think it's really important to do that, to actually improve on it, because right now the performance is not great at all, to put it mildly. And the worst part of it, in my view, is we can't recover dropped columns. As in, once you've dropped a column, that value will remain in the table forever, be it as actual values in the table or be it as nulls, which also has the implication of, before I never had a null in my table, but now I always have nulls in my table, which means I occupy the null split map, which is not necessarily a lot, but it can be significant. But yeah, the logical versus physical ordering of attributes is indeed something that is very interesting, but a lot of work, and there hasn't been enough work on that, in my view. Though, yeah, I'm probably preaching to the choir around that. It's just that I want to know how can we improve on it without too much effort, I guess. Yeah. Yeah, I'm sorry, but that's basically all I had. I was told I'd really have liked some more people to be here, but it doesn't have to be that way. It is this way. That's a shame. Oh well.
I have a slightly unrelated question though.
Oh,
Is there currently any known spare bits, and I do mean bits, in the heap that are currently unused as we have them stored now? Like,
it's a good question.
Yeah.
I don't know. I am not very up to date with how the how heap is currently stored, but I believe there are, because if I recall correctly, the not quite hot patches, I'm not quite sure what they were called. Some people called them the warm patch sets, which are basically hot, but in those cases where hot doesn't really apply. I think they were using some spare bits in the heap tuple header, but I'm not 100% sure of that, but fairly certain.
The reason I have for asking is somewhat selfish, that but it would benefit this as well, is that if if just one of those unused bits could be used to say the very first 32-bit integer in any 8K block is the block format version number, then that would enable us to have considerable flexibility for things like saying that in this block, these columns are stored out of order. and you could impose essentially a separate block format for individual blocks within a segment. And where I'm going with this is that that block format could have 64-bit transaction IDs.
Yes, I see where you're going, but that is not necessarily that's not strictly necessary, because right now we already use strictly increasing integer in each heap tuple header. That's called the amount of attributes that's stored, and it will only increase within the table as the as columns are added. So strictly speaking, you could already check which version of the tuple system you're using by the increasing tuple number of attributes that's stored. So you don't really strictly need an extra block header or tuple header field for that to determine that.
Interesting, thank you.
Or at least, if I understand what you would want to do with it, then you wouldn't strictly need it.
Yeah, my thought was basically, how do we distinguish, blocks that were written post 64-bit transition from ones that were written that were basically inherited from the upgraded system. And I had thought that perhaps by using different segment files, we could identify at the file level that a different format was being used. But then you're necessarily abandoning all existing segments for any future data, and it would take some sort of vacuum full to ultimately reclaim that space.
Okay, so this was about transaction ID and 64-bit transaction IDs, not about heap tuple format.
Right, but
okay.
in essence, Xmin and Xmax are just a different form of this problem that you have, whereas you would like to basically take the stored or the apparent order of tuples and replace it with and map it to a stored order, but you wouldn't necessarily be able to do that for like all past data. You would have to essentially do it on a block by block basis as you progress.
Yes, ish. It's not quite accurate. What I want to do is change. Well, not necessarily change. What I want is that our system automatically places columns in places where they would fit best when a table is created. And when you add a column, you can fit it in the table, just like I believe MySQL and others allow you to do, so that you can most efficiently store your data. For instance, if I have Boolean followed by big int, then I should be able to fit 7 Booleans, or what is it, at least another integer in the tuple without changing the tuple size significantly. Right now that is impossible because I can only add columns at the end of the row, which is not great. Even when I do a table rewrite through changing the type of a column, the columns are not shrunk into a format that works. Even though we technically do have a row versioning system that could, in a very technical manner, support the row, the column ordering with enough effort. But there's not enough effort put in there, so that's a limitation, as always. So no, this is not. It was not about rewriting all the data or detecting all the versions of data. It was about supporting new orderings in a backwards compatible manner, which eventually would indeed require detection of old formats, but not necessarily rewriting that old format. And detecting the old format is relatively easy if it is only new columns can be inserted at any place, as opposed to old columns can also be moved around in the table. I hope that answers your question.
Yes, thank you very much.
Okay. Well, I think that was it for me. Or maybe Thomas, you have something to add, but considering that you just now joined, I don't think so.
I have more questions than answers for this topic.
Okay.
One question is, do you have ideas for the dropped columns? You mentioned that a few minutes ago.
Yes, indeed. Dropped columns. What kind of solutions do you want? Because right now we just can't drop them. We need them to determine we need to keep them for offsets and all. We can't really drop them.
Yeah, I know. I mean, to reduce the space.
Yes. Sadly, within how it is right now, we can't drop them, period, because, well, we need to retain the IDs. Only if we would put in the actual efforts to renumber columns, we could eventually get rid of even their bits of space usage in the null bitmap. But that's that very much depends on renumbering the columns, as in the actual column count in the catalogs, and that requires a table rewrite to the best of my knowledge, and we don't really have the infrastructure for that right now, and that would also require a huge patch, probably something like what was linked in the chat earlier. And I'm not amazingly familiar, and that is already 8 years old or so, 7 years old roughly. Yeah. We could try to revive that at some point in the future, but maybe sometime. Any more questions?
Well, there is another one that's related to this order of attributes. I mean, do you have ideas how to handle multiple orders of attributes if we decided to have different orders for the same table, for example? Because right now we have a fixed order. All of the implementation is based on a slot, and we have fixed order, even if we implement the logical versus physical attributes, we keep the same layout. So do you
Yes.
have comments on it?
Yes, because we have a monotonically increasing counter each time we add a column. That is the heap tuple gets a number of attributes that is stored in the heap tuple header. We can use that as a version identifier of the column order, and use that as we can use that to determine which version of the tuple layout we should use. It's not great, but it would work. And then we would
one per page. Sorry.
no. Each heap tuple has its own count of how many attributes it has accounted for in its in the tuple. That also determines the limit of the amount of columns that a table will ever have, because we can only account for so many null bits in the heap tuple header. Something in the order of 200 bytes can be accounted for, so that puts a limit at something like 1600 columns in total at the limit. That same number can also be used to determine which version of the layout for that table should be used. For instance, if I have stored a tuple two layouts ago, that is other example, I have a current layout and I add a new column somewhere in the middle. Then that will add a new layout that has the version number of how many columns that has. That would work. It wouldn't be great, but it would work. It would add. It would have a memory overhead of up to n squared on n on the amount of columns it has in a bad case, but it would work. And would allow us to consistently distinguish between tuple layouts. Any more comments? Otherwise, I might just go and try join the one of the other streams.
Not from my side.
Okay. Thomas or Dan? Nope, apparently not. Then thanks and bye.